Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. I am your host, Mark Silverman. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Bill Masur, who I met through the internet, through the power of Twitter. He spouts some really good wisdom, which I find comes directly from his own inquiry and his own search for a masculine identity in this world. And I'm really taken with what he shares in the world. He's written a book called Uncomfortable Truths, and we'll get into talking about that. And he's the founder of the Men of Character Conference, which had a who's who of some of the brightest male thinkers on the planet today. And I was really impressed watching him build that together. And then he is a husband and father and an all-around good guy. Bill, thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Mark. That's probably the nicest introduction I've ever gotten, so I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. So again, the reason I wanted to talk to you was not because you're one of these pithy, witty guys looking for attention on Twitter. You're just basically publicly sharing your search for masculine wisdom and your identity, and it's garnered you a lot of followers because a lot of people are looking for that. What sparked this journey for you?
I think you just said it, right? My own personal journey to just be a better man, a better father, a better husband, like that own the development of myself has led me to feel like I can speak on certain things from my own experience and from just the last couple of years of my life, that I just started sharing it, found other people that, I related to, and we built like a little community. It's pretty cool of fathers and men and some women as well that I think just put out a message of like living a life of character, which is probably the center point of what I want to start talking about more and what I think is missing in a lot of modern society.
What does it mean to be a man of character?
Well, it's like aspirational, right? You want to, like, if you look at the roots of the word character, it's the word hero. Like, it has a Greek origin. So you want to be aspirational. I think there's a desire in men. Like, there's a book called Wild at Heart, a great book that most men should read. And he talks about the desire to like live a life of adventure. And so I think because life is, can get like into a routine and can get boring and feel like you're losing yourself in it. And I think if you don't have that element of what you're aspiring to, what your vision is, or a mission, you like lose part of you dies. Like a lot of men like die in a life like of despair. And then they don't even realize it, right? They don't know what their intuition is. They don't know. I get messages from people like, how do I find my life mission, my purpose? I don't know if I have a 100% accurate answer to all that, but I think you have to live a life that you aspire to. You have to, it's like the all the stuff that you have in your mind of like how you wish you would be or the type of person you could be. You have to aspire towards it. You have to put in the work and you have to have that vision in your mind, keep that alive, or else part of you just dies. So that I tweet about that because I try to hold myself to that standard, and I think other men should as well. And it's not like a bravado thing. It's like you should do it for real, like do it in your real life, not like for Instagram or for Twitter. It's like there's a powerful part behind it. You have to actually live it.
I read the book Wild at Heart years ago, and
I just read it.
Excuse me?
Great book.
Well, now it's a very Christian focused book.
Yep.
And being a New York Jew, it still spoke to me so deeply about the perils. We men want to be such good husbands. We want to be good citizens. We want to be good spiritual people, and sometimes we throw out the earthiness, the wildness, the things that make us men.
Yep.
And me, like if we go further, I'm a gay New York Jew, right? And I still want to be an earthy, a man of consequence. And I think we did a really good job in that, of threading the needle, of saying, let's not throw out everything that makes us men in favor of being good spiritual lambs.
That's right. And I think even if you look at young boys, right, they have this natural wildness to them, at least the ones that I've interacted with in my life. And I think a lot of our culture now like beats that out of men. And I don't think that's good. And I think a lot of the negative consequences that we get from men, that some of it rightly so is blamed on men, is because of that, because our culture is just not very, they sort of doesn't care anymore about the interests or needs of men to some degree. I know that might sound ridiculous to some people, but I think masculinity needs nurturing and guidance, or else it can go into very dark paths. And if it doesn't have this, which I think like Wild at Heart talks about, there is a wildness to the masculine like archetype or persona, but it needs to be put into healthy outlets. And that's not like a moralistically healthy. It's like you got to live what you believe your life is, and be courageous enough to live it. And I don't know what that is for each person, but every person should try to do that, or every man should.
Yeah, I think the book. I think the book and the movie Fight Club is a lot about that, where masculinity goes awry without a channel. We don't have. You're right. We don't have rites of passage. We don't have things that help signal how are we growing as men. How are our mentors bringing us forward? So we have to fend for ourselves to figure out how to. Our women are saying, "Please be better men. Please be vulnerable. Please be strong. Please ravage me. Please be vulnerable." Like. How are we supposed to thread that?
Yeah, it's very confusing, right? And I think a lot of that advice, if you take it at face value, is actually probably not good advice. And I think, so it's like that's where I found where my focus continues to be on, is like the more I put those things into my life that I aspire to be a good man and a strong man, that all different facets of my life improve. So once I wasn't ever planning to be talking about these things publicly to some degree. Like it sounded nice or cool. I was like, oh, that'd be interesting. I'd love to help other men. I'd love to help people. And then as I just shared more of my story, I think the first time I gained some followers, I just put my own like fitness journey, and that got me like 1,000 followers. And then it was like another thing. So it's just been a progression of my own experiences and my own insights, and sharing that. So now I have like a platform. It's pretty, I'm grateful for it. And I don't take the opportunity or the responsibility lightly.
Your humility is absolutely beautiful. And
I appreciate that.
So you wrote a tweet story, a thread basically of the uncomfortable truths, and that kind of went viral.
Yeah.
And there's so much in there, and I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes so people can go read it for themselves. And then you put it into a book where you espouse what each one of these mean to you.
I'm still writing it. The thread went viral, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it would do well because I have a decent sized audience. But yeah, it went way more viral than anything I've really had. And now I thought, you know what, these are things that I believe are truths, and they touch on all different aspects, politically, masculinity, that I'm like, I should just take this opportunity. I've been wanting to write something. I've been thinking more something on character, but this actually, for me at least, would be much easier to write, because I actually do believe in most of these truths, at least in the way I stated them. And I think they're not well understood. So I'm excited to be able to share that with people. And
I can't wait to see it, because again, I don't agree with a lot of things, and I agree with I resonate. So forget agree or disagree. I resonate with a lot of what you said. One of the lines in there was, depression and anxiety are symptoms of too much consumption and too little creation. You were put on this earth to create, which is what I tell every one of my clients. Anyone I come is and if you want to get out of whatever's going on, create. What do you want to create? Do you want to create relationship? Do you want to create money? Do you want to create fitness? What do you want to create?
Yep. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if that one is absolutely true in all cases, because some people brought up like Anthony Bourdain. I think there are there's other reasons why people are depressed, right?
Of course. There's clinical depression, and any blanket statement can be, but as far as a societal level,
Yeah, I think in like what we talked about before, right? The dying in despair. Me personally, one of the things that has for the last 10 years, whether you want to say I was stubborn or it bothered me, was I just didn't feel like if you don't create, you don't put your what is in your soul out into the world, the ideas, you just live a life of first off, you have regrets, right? You don't create what's on your mind. And then you see somebody else do it. Now you're thinking you're an idiot. And it's like when you create, there is an act. It's like there's a spiritual aspect to it. It's why we're here in a lot of different ways. We're here biologically to procreate. Like that might seem controversial now, but I don't think it is. That's why we're here. And everything that you like, a lot of the things that we complain about the world would be solved if we just went and created what we believed instead of trying to tear. So that's everything that I do. It's like, all right, well, I don't think that people understand these truths. Well, I'll write a book about it. I'll put into the world how I see it. Now, I don't say that I'm 100% right. I'm always learning and adding nuance and correcting my own thinking. But I definitely think that there's a lot of things that I should be putting into the world in an attempt to push the world in a better direction. And I think if most people did that, they spend less time arguing about politics and other nonsense that they have no control over, and they would just put something beautiful, like just like when you have a child, there's something like fantastic that you've created, you and your wife or whatever. The same thing happens with a creation, whether it's software or a product or something physical. Like it's a piece of you that now exists in the world. It's something I think a lot of people, because we live in this consumer society, that they just never experience. And it's fascinating. You like how that your creation affects other people and then almost has a life of its own. So that was the thinking behind that one.
I don't think people realize that they're creating all day, every day. I don't think that they feel that they're creative
That's
energy.
right.
So that I think that they think it's not for them, when if they really saw, they are creating relationship, whether good or bad or indifferent. They're creating, employment. They're creating chaos. They're creating peace all day, every day.
Yeah, and even people that have a full-time job, right? Like what I've noticed is there's some people that are very highly skilled professionals, and they get very caught up. They take their work very personally, and they don't have a creative outlet. So they get frustrated when they can't completely control what goes on at work. They tell themselves that the executives are idiots and this and that, and they get really frustrated. And honestly, in my experience, the more I create things that have nothing to do with my work, like my day job, like it reduces a pressure for me to have to be perfect at work. I think a lot of people would benefit that, that they might be telling themselves, oh, I'm not the creative type, and I just don't think that's true. Every child, if you have full mental capabilities, you're born creative, and you need to unearth that. If you've buried it in you, you need to get back to that creative type. Whether you have the idea you want to paint and you have no idea how to paint, go and take a painting course. Like you need to human attribute to go and create. So just whatever it is that's on your mind, it could be literally anything. Just go and create it. Take a first step at it. The internet today, like you said, I created a conference that literally cost me more to make the logo at first. In the first 3 months, it cost more money to make the logo than it did to pay for the software. Like there's so many amazing tools out there for people to create that you'd be surprised. Just takes a willingness to believe that it's possible, and then a little work to search Google. It's like, we have it very easy.
At this, especially at this time in society and in employment opportunity, I have two sons, one who just graduated college and one who is in the middle. And with the economy the way it is and jobs being, pretty competitive and tough, the conversation about what do you want to create and how can you be creative in how you go about life, since my parents, you grew up, you got a job, you got married, you had kids. Even when I was coming up, that's what you did. And now people are trying to figure out, people who are my age who are losing their jobs, what do I do? And then kids who are coming out of college or not even going to college, how do I decide like my younger son didn't even go to college yet. He went to a gap year because conventional wisdom said you go to college, and he wasn't ready. So he got so much out of going abroad and just kind of having experiences. So this creation conversation has implications far and wide.
Yeah. And I think like one of the things I've been thinking about recently is, I went through the same experience, right? School and what are you going to do? And I just disagree. I want to opt out of the whole thing. I just think it's really, I think a lot of parents are well-meaning, and I hope I don't do this to my own children. I think they are, like, at the end of the day, like, your parent is worried about what's safe for you, what's the safest route, what's going to keep you, like, food on the table and house. But each person, I think, knows, like, deep down, they're like, no, what's the fullest potential? What's like the thing that I could do? And I just think the society is too molded to the safe route, and we suffer as a whole because of that. Because we just, like, genius dies in public schools. It dies in trying to force you to make decisions when you're not ready for it. And I don't know. We can survive now on if you think about it, if you didn't have debt and you came out of college, you could live like as a roommate somewhere and figure it out now. Is that exactly what you should do? I don't know. But my point is, that whole pressure of, which I think more people are coming around to, right, of just forcing people to go to college and take on all this debt. Yeah, I don't agree with it at all. I think debt and all those things stop you from the ability from being creative, right? Because you feel like, well, I can't take that risk. I've got to keep with this job or do this because.
I watch the teachers in my town have 2 side jobs just to be able to stay teachers, to pay off their debt, to be, so definitely.
Well, and a lot of the truths in my thread, like, some of them talk about that political aspect of, which I think are issues that nobody talks about anymore, but, like our monetary system, the way that it's so easy and encouraged to get into debt, I don't think has helped. It might have made us more wealthy financially, some people, but it hasn't made us more fulfilled as human beings. And I think a lot of the problems of society have roots in things that are institutions of our government that have been, it's been around, Federal Reserve is since 1913 and public education since 1850s. But these things have consequences that I don't think they're well-intentioned to some degree, you could say, but they have consequences even on the moral and societal side and family side. There's all types of consequences that we just take as business as usual. They've been going on for 150 years. But I think the consequences get worse and worse over time.
I see that I feel your deep thinking and you're thinking outside the box. One of your tweets was the sports industry and the entertainment industry are just tools to distract.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know how insightful that one was, but because other people have said it, but I think it's true. I used to watch, I'm a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. I was born in Dallas. I grew up in the 90s. They won all the Super Bowls, and first time they lost in the playoffs, I cried as a teenager. And then as an adult, I still watched every game. But at some point I realized, like, I work 5 days a week. Every Sunday is going dedicated to watching football. Like, and I don't do that anymore. But it was actually one of the hardest habits to break for me. Like, I got rid of drinking cold turkey. I stopped. I smoked cigarettes socially. That was very easy to stop. One of the hardest habits for me, not sit down on Sundays and watch football. Now, I still watch. Like, if the Cowboys are in playoff contention, I'll catch half a game, But I'll try to do it while I'm out. Like, maybe we're out and I'll go to a Chili's and watch half the game on a big screen. Or if I do go to see some sporting event, I'll go in person, right? Like, I'll actually go and watch a basketball game. But a lot of men just waste their lives watching their sports teams or just leagues in general. And it's like hours and hours of your thoughts thinking about, and I just think it's a distraction. It's a distraction because your life is not where you want it to be. And then there's aspects of sport that speak to the masculine soul, right? Like it's not a bad thing. There's there's like excellence involved in it. There's a heroic aspect to it. And that speaks to us. But there's a difference between watching it and trying to live it. So I think I had another tweet previously that was, you should play sports just as much as you watch sports. So if you want to watch, football every weekend, you should be doing something else, running, going to the gym. Like, you can't let the only exciting parts of your week be you watching sports. It's like, you'll be excited in the moments, but then, or like the other people that, their team loses and their day is ruined. Like, you're a grown man, like, very silly. I'm telling you as someone who is guilty of it, so I'm not.
No, I love it. I'm up here in my office working often, and my partner's downstairs watching baseball, and I'll hear, "God damn it!" And I'm like, "What?" It's like, "Fucking drop the ball." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, I don't say never do that. It's more like, and I'm not trying to tell people how exactly to live, but it's always good to take a step back and be like, am I doing this in a healthy amount? And is this good for me? And is this really like something that is more of a distraction than, like, if you enjoy it, there's some people, right? They do that for a living. They're sports broadcasters. Fantastic. Like, or maybe you podcast about it, and like, it's like what you do, it's your passion. But I just highly doubt that that's all these men that do this every week or every day. And
well, I think it's everything. I think it's Netflix. Netflix can be really useful when you want to just kind of zone out and chill, and maybe enjoy a time on the couch with someone. Or it can be a complete distraction. Facebook can be a place, and Twitter can be a place to connect and get a little bit of wisdom or get a little entertainment, or it can be a place where you're just completely mindless and lost.
Yeah.
Food is the same way. So it's how do you approach these things and how do you use these things?
That's right. Yep. I think today, one of the things that's different from that we deal with, that, maybe our ancestors dealt with actual hardships. Today, our hardships are trying to manage too much of instant gratification and pleasure. And I am not saying I'm a master at it, but it's something that I try to be conscious of. I probably abuse Twitter. Yeah, that's my bad vice of things that I overuse. But I at least try to make it something that's productive, on the whole.
I took it off my phone because it's crack to me.
Yeah.
I cannot, I'm absolutely addicted to We Rate Dogs, thoughts of a dog, and I pet that dog. That's the extent of what I'm allowed to look at on Twitter. No politics, no nothing, because I just get completely lost. And I forget to go and create, which is what my whole life is about. Yep. So now you've been on this journey. You created the Men of Character conference, and you interacted with some really bright, consequential people. You talk and you exchange ideas all day long with people on Twitter, with some really good people. What are you walking away with that you want the world to know? Like, what can you distill down for me here that you would like to leave as a important direction for men?
Yeah. Well, I think for men, right, like, there's a lot of different personas and people on Twitter, and a lot of I agree with some, I disagree with others, but I think where I've been honing my own messages is around character. And so then when you take a step back from that and you look at our current society, I think we lack character. And part of the reason, if you go back and you read books from 200 years ago, like, actually the founder of the self-help movement, his name was Samuel Smiles. He wrote his first book was called Self-Help. He was a British man, or from the UK. And he basically showed, like, examples of lives of people who had helped themselves, right? This was a time when you wanted to be successful, you had to get up by your bootstraps and do it, or else you just lived in squalor and poverty. So he talks about all these examples. So one of his other books was called Character, and it's something that I've been honing in on, but he's just as plain as day. The first chapter is character is built in the home. And I think that we have abandoned the home. And for example, if you tell someone that you're homeschooling your children, the first thing they tell you is, oh, but what about socialization? Like, we've chosen consumerism and socialization over the home life. Like, literally, like, we're so backwards in our thinking that someone tells you that their kids are always at home learning, and you think that they're not being socialized. Like, a lot of our greatest thinkers were not people that, first off, that were very social to begin with. Some of the best thinking is done in private. So it's like we've created like people that need other people's approval, need to be constantly entertained. And it's like, no, you need to, and then they don't feel good about themselves, right? They're insecure about themselves. Like, okay, you got to come back in. Feel good about yourself, feel good about who you are. And it's okay to and the home is the center place of that. So it's you could say it's very traditional. It probably is, but I think if you look back at why the United States was created and why the Industrial Revolution happened, these were people that they were miracles, in my opinion, and they occurred because people understood hard work and character. And we are at the tail end of a people that no longer understand the things that created them. They just don't. They're blinded by the abundance that was created by those events. And we're like caught in it. We're just like eating too much, consuming too much, gossiping too much, we're lost. So I want to bring it back to no, the simple basic things. And we have to have perspective. Like, we complain about political things, but we have to actually understand the world that we live in was an actual miracle. It was created by people who were very hardworking, who were high character, like incredibly high character. Like I read, if you read this book, he talks about a person who knew 15 languages. Imagine being from the 1850s and you managed to learn 15 languages. Today, you'd know someone who knows 2 languages and you're impressed.
Right.
So we just no longer have, a lot of people say the men they no longer exist, right? They're men like that no longer, they don't. And so I think, I'm not saying I'm that guy from the 1850s, but I'm going to die aspiring to be. So it's we have to create a movement of men that want to aspire to be that. So I don't know if that's too long-winded, but that's where I'm at in what I'm trying to do.
So again, the things that you say aren't for me or anybody to agree or disagree, but to listen to and then to ponder for ourselves. That's where I find you a wonderful expression of just let's take a step back and decide, because I think, again, when I'm talking about midlife, is we've spent so much time getting ourselves right for society, getting ourselves right for our parents' expectation, getting ourselves right for LinkedIn, and not enough time getting ourselves right for ourselves, right? Not enough time finding out what our character is and all that. So I really appreciate it. It's true. You call it uncomfortable truths. Everything you say, when you speak, it's so interesting. I'm on the knife's edge of, that's a little extreme. That's a little confrontational. That's, that could be taken this way. That could be taken that way. And that's, that's from my societal political polarization. And if we can just let go of that and actually just sit there and look at what you have to say and other people, the truths that we might want to work with, then I think we all aspire to so much of the same things. It's a great way to have a conversation. And I appreciate you being one of those people who can actually thread the needle. That's the highest compliment I can possibly give, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Because it is so rife with triggers.
Yeah. And I've spent a lot of time trying to think, because we do live in an age where, right, there's some landmines of things that you can't talk about, you're told. And I know there's some risk involved, even with myself, but I read these books from the 1800s, and in some weird way, these men that I'm never going to meet, inspired me. They even talk about one thing that I think we forget as modern people. We're so afraid to speak our mind publicly, and they call that a lack of honor. They're just very straightforward. If you feel something is wrong with the way things are going and you don't say anything, it's a lack of honor.
Wow.
There could be a risk towards you. There could be a risk. 100% there's a risk, right? People are doxxed and banned from platforms and all types of stuff. But I also think if you don't say what's on your mind, part of you dies. If you don't say what's on your mind, you won't live a courageous life. Like those are just facts. So the risk on the downside is against your own self, like it's against your own conscience. So I know I feel good. I actually, because I do worry about these things, but I feel good because I know my intentions are in the right place. So that's why people are like, oh well, you said something, maybe you said a little wrong, or and I'll make mistakes. I know it's plenty of times I might missay something or put something the wrong way, but I know my intentions are right, and so I feel like if you know your intentions are right, go forward. So
how many watches do you have left?
well, they're actually in production right now. I think I've got about 80 left.
So Bill has made a Men of Character watch. If you go to his website,
That's
which I'll put in the
right.
show notes, it is high. It is such a nice watch.
Well, I appreciate that.
So I want to leave this with my favorite of all of your tweets. If you believe your degree, your religion, your job makes you better than another person, you are an asshole. I love that one.
Yep.
There's no controversy there.
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah, I don't know. Like I have my own job, my own religious beliefs, but I can't stand the person that thinks they're above someone else because of something like that. I think and I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, right? But like any person that you meet, like you said, you're creating, right? If I go to Starbucks and I interact with the person behind the counter, if that's a good interaction, I make that person feel good. That's a net positive to society. If I make that person feel like I'm someone special and they're just scum, how's that good for the world? So I think, and I can do better at that, but I do try to consciously think of that. Like you can learn from everyone. That's why I love Twitter. I'll find an account with, maybe 5 followers. And if it's something useful, I'll follow the person. I don't look for status and how many followers you have. Like if your intentions are right, you sound like a smart person, you have something insightful, I think it's worth hearing that person out. And I think your life is worth just as much as a wealthy person.
So Bill, thank you so much. I'm going to put all your links in the show notes so people can find you and follow you. And I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and in such a humble way. It makes it even more profound for me.
Well, thank you, Mark. Yeah, you're making me blush over here, but I appreciate it.
You're backlit enough that nobody can see. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
So to everybody else, thank you for giving me your most important commodity, which is your time and attention. I love you and have a great rest of the day.